Well, welcome, my friends, to another episode here of Extreme Health Radio. Super excited to be with you. This is going to be a great show. We're going to be talking with Dr. Lee Cowden. Thanks, guys, for the patience on the technical issues. We've been having some major tech issues lately, so we've been able to overcome them, so I appreciate your patience for that. This is going to be a great show. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about brain and neurological development, brain and neurological health, and natural ways to reverse these things if possible. So I'll introduce Dr. Cowden in just a second. This is episode 649. So if you guys want to grab the show notes, anything like that, the links to the Extreme Health Academy or any of the sponsors for today's show, all you got to do is remember extremehealthradio.com/649. This morning I had my red light therapy. I had my PEMF therapy. I'm ready to go. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm feeling good. I hope you guys are feeling great. So let me just make sure, if you guys haven't subscribed to our show, make sure to do that because we have a lot of really cool and interesting guests coming up. And let me just read off to you our show schedule. Lots of cool people coming up. So today, obviously, Dr. Lee Cowden, natural healing of the brain. And then on Wednesday, speaking of the brain, we're going to talk with someone who our friend Ty Bollinger interviewed on The Truth About Cancer, Allison Huish, and she used essential oils for her brain tumor. So that's going to be an interesting show. I believe it was frankincense, if my memory is correct. So that's going to be a great show this Wednesday at 10:45 a.m. And then on Friday, we have Dr. Ron Hunninghake from the Riordan Clinic. We're going to be talking with him about high-dose vitamin C, detoxification, cleansing. Then next Monday at this time, we're going to be talking with Dr. Russell Jaffe, and that's going to be a great interview too. So if you guys haven't subscribed to us on iTunes, if you're on iTunes, you'll get a show every single day. You'll get our best of archive content as well. But if you're on YouTube watching, make sure to subscribe, and that way you'll get a notification. I think there's a little bell somewhere where you can get notifications of all the shows coming up and whenever we go live and all that good stuff. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those shows. Let me see here. Let me bring up all my information about Dr. Cowden. We're going to be talking with him about naturally healing of the brain, and he's the author of many books, but some of which are Bioenergetic Tools for Wellness, The Journey to Wellness, as well as Longevity and Alternative Medicine Definitive Guide, as well as Create a Toxin-Free Body and Home Starting Today. And he is a board-certified cardiologist, specialist in internal medicine. He's internationally known and recognized for his proficient technique in the use of evaluative kinesiology. And as well, he has refined treatments for things like cancer, Lyme disease, autism, Parkinson's disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. He's got these protocols for all of these things, as well as many other medical conditions, and including, I should say here, reversing heart and cardiovascular disease. And he's also Dr. Mercola's personal physician. So this is going to be a great show. We've known about Dr. Cowden's work for many years, and it's an honor to have him on the show. So let me bring him up here and turn on his audio so we can hear him and introduce him. All right, there we go. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, I'm so glad. We kind of went back and forth, and we had to reschedule a couple times. But thank you for being on and for all of your work. And so whereabouts are you today?
Out in West Texas.
West.
I was born and raised out here, and it feels like home.
Yeah, wow. So you're in St. Angelo is where you were telling me before, right?
Yeah.
St. Angelo, Texas. Yeah, I was just telling you before the show, we just drove by there, actually drove right through there on our way to see our biological dentist, Dr. Stuart Nunley out there.
Yep, I'm going to see Stuart in just a few days. He's coming to a think tank on ALS down in Houston.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when you start realizing the connection between neurological disorders and your teeth, it's pretty profound how your teeth impact your neurological health, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Most of the skilled integrative medicine doctors in Germany say to the patients the new patients when they come into their office, have you been to see the biological dentist yet? If the answer is no, they say, get out of here. I can't help you till you finish that.
Yeah. Now, is the term, do you know, in your circles, biological dentistry, is that something that's kind of becoming more mainstream and people are starting to understand what they are now?
Well, we're hopeful that that will happen. I've been having some communications with the largest dental school in the United States, which is out in Glendale, Arizona,
Uh-huh.
and they're really seriously looking at having a biological dental rotation in their dental school program.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you said you're going to be meeting with Dr. Stuart Nunley at a conference coming up?
Yeah, a think tank, a workshop in Houston on reversing amyotrophic lateral sclerosis.
My goodness, my goodness. Yeah, it's
Doc,
fascinating
doc,
too.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Dr. Nunley had ALS himself, and he worked with Dr. Hal Huggins before he passed away to reverse that condition. So now Dr. Nunley treats patients from all over the globe that have ALS and other chronic neurological diseases. Treats their mouth primarily because that's such a great contributor, a severe contributor to the neurological conditions.
Yeah, he was describing, we did a little YouTube video when we were at his office a couple weeks ago, and he kind of went through his story and shared what was going on with him and his I guess he wasn't officially diagnosed with ALS, but he had all the markings of it, he was saying, and all the symptoms of it, and he was on his way to getting an official diagnosis. But then he started working with, like you said, Dr. Huggins before he passed, and cleansing, detox, and getting rid of all that mercury, right?
Yeah, and they cleaned out some dental sockets. Very often there's chronic low-grade infection in the mouth, and those infections in the mouth are producing biotoxins that get into the bloodstream and poison various enzyme systems in the body and the nervous system usually.
So when someone has these sort of dental issues like cavitations or root canals, I had a couple of those removed by him a couple of years ago. And when someone has these poisons that are sort of leaching in the jawline, in the gums, they somehow make it up to the brain, because we're going to be talking about brain health today. And is that what happens? They leach through the blood-brain barrier and start affecting neurological pathways and things?
Absolutely do. And some of the biotoxins that are produced inside the cavitational sockets, the bony cavitational areas, are more toxic than most other man-made toxins on the planet.
So they're more toxic, meaning what do they do?
Well, they poison the metabolism of the cell. Dr. Boyd Haley did some research at the University of Kentucky and found that when he had the dentist that he was working with put a wick beside a root canal tooth, a cotton wick, and then send that to his office, and then he exposed different enzyme systems to that chemical, that group of chemicals that was on that wick that was coming out of the root canal tooth, that it reduced the function of those enzymes anywhere from 60% to 95%.
Wow, 60 to 95% just by the exposure from putting that wick just above where the root canals are?
So there's toxins that are coming out beside the tooth that has a root canal in it continuously,
Uh-huh.
and so you're that's getting into your saliva, you're swallowing it, it's getting absorbed through the buccal mucosa straight into the bloodstream. Some of that goes to the liver, some of it poisons the liver, some of it goes to the brain, poisons the brain.
My goodness, my goodness. So when you're looking at neurological health and brain health, and you're seeing an epidemic of these types of issues in today's culture, especially growing amongst older people. And when you're looking at these types of things, and you have all the different sort of triggers of what they could be, the different chemicals and glyphosates, toxins, things that we're exposed to, how high up would you put dental work up there, do you think, on that list?
In the top 5 out of about 30 or 40 causes.
Top 5. So would it be number 1 or, somewhere in
In
there?
some cases, in some patients, it's number 1. In other patients, it's number 3 or 4.
Wow.
So it depends on what else is going on with that patient.
My goodness. So when it comes to brain health, do you know the stats and the numbers? And I used to remember those, but it's growing like crazy. These incidences of ALS and Alzheimer's and all these neurological diseases. It seems like you're hearing it. It's almost kind of like cancer, right? Like you're just hearing it a lot these days.
Yeah, it's definitely on the rise. And, the allopathic medical community has almost nothing to offer these patients. So that's why in our academy, we've taken on the task of trying to find solutions for those chronic neurological diseases, so that the patients that are suffering from that don't just have to suffer, that they can get some help.
So someone say with let's just pick one off the top of our head, say ALS, or let's just go with that. I know someone, an ex-girlfriend of mine, her father just recently passed away of ALS, and so when you say that the standard medical doctors don't really have any solutions, what are the solutions that they're trying to offer people for ALS as an example?
Oh, for allopathic medicine, it's purely symptomatic for ALS.
Mm-hmm.
The patients with ALS typically deteriorate neurologically over about 2 years' time and die. They die from respiratory failure usually, because the muscles that go to their respiratory system get paralyzed and don't work.
So they just, I don't recall too much of what they tried to treat this person I knew with, but what do they normally do? Just kind of facilitate an environment where they can breathe a little bit better, and that's about it?
Yeah, it's purely symptomatic treatment. Pharmaceutical drug to deal with secretions, pharmaceutical drugs to deal with any degree of bronchospasm that they may have. It's purely symptomatic treatment.
And when they're treating someone like that with Alzheimer's, I guess we can take each one of these separately, but with ALS, for example, they're treating the symptoms, but do we have any connections when, you're doing some studying and you're researching all this information? What are we looking at as far as causative factors for something like ALS, do you think?
ALS is probably, for most patients, at least 20 or 30 different causes, and that's why the allopathic medical system hasn't probably had much impact on it, because they're usually looking for one cause and one magic bullet, one magic drug.
Yeah, it's sort of like the standard of care, right? It's like a one size fits all kind of treatment, and then probably the same is applied to the cause of things too, right?
Yeah, but we know that there's almost always a dental connection. Either root canal teeth or infections of the jawbone where wisdom teeth were removed. And by the way, the wisdom teeth and the retromolar area behind the wisdom teeth are on the energy pathway that goes to the brain and lymphatic system, cardiovascular system. So it's having a negative effect both chemically as well as energetically.
Wow.
And then, there's mercury poisoning. There's a variety of other chemical poisons. There's a condition that was first described in Guam, in the island of Guam, which is ALS-like symptoms, Parkinson's-like symptoms, and dementia altogether in patients. And they found that in a lot of those patients, the primary culprit was a biotoxin produced by an algae. And these people in Guam were eating bats and developing a neurological disease. And so some epidemiologists went over there and analyzed the bats and found that they had high levels of beta-methylamino L-alanine. And they said, well, where's that coming from? So they looked at the diet of the bats, and they found that these bats were eating mostly the fruit of a palm tree. And so they analyzed the palm fruit and found that high levels of BMAA in that. And they said, well, how's it getting into the fruit? So they analyzed the soil right around the base of the tree and found that there was algae around the roots producing BMAA taken up by the roots, taken into the fruit, eaten by the bat, eaten by the people, and then they get ALS and Parkinson's and dementia.
My goodness, that is such a crazy story to see that they actually followed it all the way back to the algae and to the roots of the tree. Now, was this bacteria affecting the bats at all? Probably not, right?
Probably, but not as much as it was affecting the humans.
Jeez, that's amazing. And so,
there's a bioconcentration concept. So if the bats eat fruit, they get some, but the BMAA is bioconcentrated into the tissues of the bat and the muscle tissues and so on. So when the humans eat the bat, they get a much higher concentration of BMAA than the bat got from eating the fruit.
Jeez, that's so interesting how it could all be connected. And it's interesting too with these diseases. It's like, for one person, it could be a toxin like that. For someone else, it could be what you mentioned a second ago, which was like your wisdom teeth extraction removals. And For one person it could be something, and another person something else, and that's why the standard of care just isn't working, is it?
It's not likely to come up with solutions for a complex illness like that. The United States medical system has the best medical system in the world when it comes to trauma. So if you have a major motor vehicle accident and get smashed up, or you have a gunshot wound or stabbing, then you want to go to a U.S. hospital trauma center and get patched up. But if you have most chronic diseases, you'd probably be better off finding a Chinese herbalist and going with that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. What would a conventional doctor, because you're a medical doctor, so what would some of your colleagues back in the day say in response to the statement that you just made right there, do you think? They disagree with you?
They said that's heresy. That's quackery. All that, Chinese acupuncture and Chinese herbalism. That's all quackery.
Right.
It has no value, no benefit. And most of those doctors suffer severely from the NIH syndrome. That means not invented here. Not invented here.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. It's interesting too, because I'm curious about your background, because you're a medical doctor. How did you come in? Because I've heard of you on different interviews talk about the emotional side of disease and how the spiritual side is connected and these traumas, How did you, as a medical doctor, when did this evolution start happening for you?
It was in the first couple of months of medical school. I had lived all my life in arid West Texas and got accepted to medical school in Houston. So we moved down there, and I wasn't used to the humidity and the rain and the grass and the weeds and the trees and the mold and the fungus and everything else. So I started developing allergic rhinitis, then allergic sinusitis, then infective sinusitis, then bronchitis, and finally pneumonia. And I went to get advice from the chairman of 3 different medical school departments, the chairman of allergy and immunology, the chairman of ear, nose, and throat, the chairman of pulmonary, and followed their advice explicitly, and it got progressively worse. And thank goodness my wife's grandmother came to visit us. She was a school teacher and self-taught nutritionist. She had pity upon me. She took me to the health food store, got notes and vitamins, minerals, and herbs, and I got very well very fast.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, my goodness, I need to learn what this woman knows, and then take with a grain of salt everything I learned in the training institution after this.
Wow. So, what's interesting about that is, that story is, if it, were me, I would probably just pursue this whole alternative nutrition sort of career, but you decided to stick with the schooling, and this happened relatively early. So you went through, another 4 years of schooling, even though you had this experience.
Yes. Well, I was studying both at the same time. So I went through medical school and then on to residency and fellowship, which was another 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And so, all this time, when I had time to read, I was more likely to read a book on nutrition or herbs or electromagnetic therapy or fixed magnetic therapy or, the connection between emotions and physical disease and those kind of things, than I was to read a article in the peer-reviewed literature. Because I had an intuition that a lot of the stuff that was in the peer-reviewed literature just wasn't so. Then a couple of years ago, the Nature magazine, which is one of the most respected peer-reviewed journals in the world, published an article that said that 67% of all the pharmaceutical articles that are published in the peer-reviewed literature are not reproducible. And 89% of the articles that are published about chemotherapy drugs are not reproducible. So, if that's so, how do we know which 11% or 33% to hang our hat on?
Yeah, that is fascinating. So when did you read those articles?
That's a couple of years ago from Nature.
Okay.
But I had this intuition way back in medical school that, if I had followed the explicit advice of 3 different medical school department chairmen, it did get better. But a lay healer, basically a self-taught nutritionist, could get me well. I think I need to really pay attention to that part.
Right. So as a cardiologist and a board-certified cardiologist and working with people in there, when you finally graduated and you had your degree and all of that good stuff, and you went through it all and you're actually able to see patients, were you able to work with them on using some more natural methods? Because by then you're probably 4 or 5 years into studying natural health too, right?
Well, yeah, I started studying natural stuff in 1975,
Hmm.
and I finished my formal training in 1984. But while I was going through my standard training, I was applying some of the things that I learned quietly, cautiously to the
Right.
patients in the hospital, and getting results when nobody thought it was possible.
Wow.
So uh, when I finished my formal training, I set up a partnership practice with another guy that went through the training institution at the same time, and we were on staff at 7 hospitals and did rounds in the 11 intensive care units twice a day, every day
Uh-huh.
for a year. And a lot of the patients that were expected to die didn't die because I was able to apply what I'd learned over the previous several years with reading on my own,
Yeah.
and they were able to get out of the hospital. The thing that was disappointing though was that most of them didn't go home and change their lifestyle. They continued the same bad dietary and fit and lifestyle habits, and
Right.
within 2, 3, 4 months they were back in the hospital with the same problem.
Yeah.
So I realized after that year that I was intervening way too far downstream.
Hmm.
So I made a decision to switch to preventive medicine, preventive cardiology, and use some of the things that I'd learned on my own, and less of the things that I learned in medical training.
Hmm.
So now about 90 to 95% of what I would help a patient with, I did not learn in any of those official schooling years with internal medicine cardiology. I learned it on my own by reading
Hmm.
and applying.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that it's not very, prevention is not very sexy for people, right? They just want to kind of continue living their life and get to a doctor if they need it, right?
Well, yeah, that's why we have the financial healthcare crisis in this country right now. People
Hmm.
that don't take responsibility for their own health, they delegate it to some doctor to patch them up and maintain their illness while they use their expensive insurance to buy the drugs and do the surgery to maintain those illnesses.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you because I've heard you on lots of other podcasts, and I've known about your work for years. And I wanted to ask you with relationship to brain and neurological issues and health and things. And I wanted to ask you about the role of electromagnetic field radiation. How
Yeah,
are how are
that's
EMFs affecting our blood-brain barrier and our neurological health? Do you think?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways. There's some of the better research on how much it affects this comes out of Germany. So they have thermography testing of the brain before and after exposure to a cell phone for different age groups, and that's amazing pictures that you can see with your eyes.
Hmm.
But you can see the radiation, the electromagnetic radiation effect on the adult brain going in about a quarter of the way. But because the 5-year-old has a thinner skull, it goes about 3/4 of the way through the brain in
Hmm.
about 5 minutes. And they've done research on people that live within 300 yards or 300 meters of a cell phone tower, and all the conditions that they get, fatigue, insomnia, anorexia, depression, anxiety, cardiac arrhythmias, blah 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 blah. So all of those things uh, are happening to us in this country because we have more EMF here than almost any other country in the world.
Hmm.
And we're going to pay the price for it. Dr. Martin Paul,
Hmm.
wrote an article, an excellent article in the peer-reviewed literature on how the electromagnetic fields disrupt the biochemistry of the body and of the brain specifically. And so so now we don't have any doubt about how it happens. A
Hmm.
lot of the allopathic doctors think, understand, well, EMF doesn't have any effect on the body of the brain. Well, no, it's actually been proven scientifically that it does. Both in the research from Germany as well as Dr. Paul's work.
Hmm. Now, if I'm correct about Dr. Paul's work, I believe he was talking about the calcium ion channels being opened in
Yes.
the cells, right, and allowing the cells to sort of, calcium to enter into the center of the cell much more prolifically, I think 1,000 times more, which is causing,
Yes.
I think in his work, he said like over 150 different disease models with regards to that. Is that true? And is that what's happening to the blood-brain barrier too? How is it affecting the brain, do you think?
Yeah, it does. The electromagnetic fields do disrupt the blood-brain barrier and allow more toxins from the environment to get through the blood-brain barrier into the brain.
I see.
So that's the effect of EMF directly on the brain. But the other thing that the Germans figured out was that the electromagnetic fields are stimulating the microbes that live in our bodies to produce more biotoxins and poison us faster chemically. And also the biotoxin, the microbes that are in our air conditioning ducts and in our house, the fungi especially, to produce biotoxins as much as 600 times greater rate of production than if we weren't exposed to the same electromagnetic field, like, for example, inside of a Faraday cage. And so we're getting poisoned chemically more because we're exposed to the EMF. We're getting exposed directly from the EMF by disrupting the blood-brain barrier and disrupting the channels in the cell membrane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating too, because I was reading something recently where, oh gosh, it was something like since the 1960s, since the early 60s, there's been 60,000 new chemicals that have sort of come on the market or sort of been introduced into our environment. So if you think about those being introduced into our environment, and then you have the blood-brain barrier being sort of diminished inside the body because of EMF, and then those 60,000 chemicals are now floating around in our bloodstream, maybe making their way into our brain. Maybe some of these are the causes of all these neurological issues?
Almost certainly so. And I think it varies from person to person, how much those, various chemicals are causing the neurological disease. We have clear evidence that mercury causes neurological disease from University of Calgary and other universities. And we see that the mercury is disrupting, the microtubule structure inside the neurological cells. So the microtubule system is responsible for transporting nutrients into the cell and responsible for transporting toxins out of the cell. But if the microtubule gets disrupted by mercury, then that didn't happen. So the cells become nutrient starved and toxin overloaded very quickly. And there's research showing that patients that died with Alzheimer's dementia on autopsy had higher levels of mercury and aluminum than the patients that died at the same age without any Alzheimer's dementia. So we're poisoning ourselves in various different ways. We breathe mercury from the breathing of the jet stream from China. China burns a lot of coal, and the coal that they burn has mercury and lead in it, and so it's coming across the Pacific and into the United States on the jet stream, and we're getting doused with it over here. Mm-hmm. So we live in one big world. The other big source of mercury is mercury amalgams in the teeth. Mercury amalgams before it goes in the mouth the government requires that it be handled in a biohazard container. After it comes out of the mouth, it has to go into another biohazard container. But the American Dental Association said that while it's in your mouth, it's perfectly safe. So I think there's something very flawed with the logic.
Yeah.
and then the other source of mercury is the breaking of fluorescent bulbs. Most people don't realize mercury is in the fluorescent bulbs, and they break one in their house. Really, they should immediately evacuate the house and call the hazmat team and try to remediate that mercury vapor that's in the air, so that lungs don't become the filter to get it out of the air.
Mm-hmm. And I remember Hal Huggins, before he passed, was saying that a lot of people were debating how much mercury is toxic to the body and all this stuff. But I remember him saying once that 1 atom of mercury is a biological toxic overload to the body. The body doesn't know how to deal with it, and I thought that was fascinating. 1 atom? That's tiny.
Yeah, but most chemists that deal with toxicity in the body say that mercury is more toxic than any other element other than some of the radioactive elements.
Mm-hmm. Man, I tell you, Doc, I am so excited about one of the best things I've ever done is get my mercury amalgam fillings removed by Dr. Nunley. We did that back in 2010. And I started learning about alternative health, I think around 2003 is when I really got into it, as a result of my mom's cancer. And then subsequently I learned about oral health and mercury fillings. And in 2010, we just went to Dr. Nunley and just, put it on a little care credit card. And I think I had 4 or 5, amalgams removed, and best thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably the most important thing most people can do. And a lot of people just don't understand that they shouldn't have mercury in their body like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a really, really interesting topic here. And I hope you guys are enjoying the show with Dr. Lee Cowden. We're going to take a little bit of a break here. And I hope you guys are interested. And if you have any questions, I think what we'll do is in the chat room, I see a ton of you guys are chatting, which is really cool. What we'll do is if you have any questions in the next couple minutes, type them in all caps if they relate to neurological health and brain health, because that's the subject of today's show. So type them in all caps, and when we come back from the break, I will make sure to ask Dr. Cowden some of your questions. We'll kind of bounce around a little bit and see what you guys think and ask him your questions. And I wanted to share with you guys this. We've been selling a lot of these lately, and I just wanted to bring it up to you again because it's one of my favorite sort of detoxification tools. And let me bring this up on the show page so you guys can take a look at it. It's our Relax far infrared sauna, and sauna therapy has been used for thousands and thousands of years. Oh my gosh, it's one of the best things ever to help detoxify chemicals and heavy metals from your body. We recently had a guest on the show, Dr. Christopher Shade, and let me play his little clip about sauna therapy and detoxification here.
How do I detoxify from plastics? I mean, you guys are using a sauna, and that's something I'd like to get. And what does a sauna do for us? A sauna is great. It's moving a number of different toxins. Remember, we talked about the mice, that if you put PCBs in there, then that made the mercury all that much worse. And sweating moves out a lot of plastics, volatiles, fat-based toxins. It's really good at moving those out and sweating those out. So that's how you're getting those out, and those are contributing to this synergistic soup inside the body. And so that's why they're good, is they're taking out a bunch of the different things in the soup.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And it's one of our favorite little tools that we use on a daily basis, just about. I actually used to use it every single day for probably about 6 days a week. But since the birth of our twin little boys about 6 months ago, I'm lucky if I can get 3 days a weekend, but I'm super happy for that. And here's a little clip here from our good friend Daniel Vitalis talking about sweating as well.
Use your sauna. I know you guys promote saunas. I won't go on about that, but I think it's important to use saunas because they help to increase body temperature. There's a lot of great benefits to that, but some that I like are that in wild nature we experience hot and cold, and at room temperature, which is a domesticated thing, we don't really get to feel metabolic extremes. So I think it's really good to challenge your body to cool itself and to heat itself. And so because I'm saying heat itself, I really recommend cold showers. Let's say 80% of your showers end cold.
Oh.
You know, right? You don't have to do it every time, but most of the time, if you end your shower cold, you'll start to build up your resistance to cold, and you'll also really tonify your skin and also kind of help to wring your body out at a detox level. That's really important.
Mm-hmm. And so the sauna is something that we do about 3 days a week now. And then this one's really cool too because it's portable. It doesn't cost you, $3,000 or $4,000. You don't have to, knock out a wall. It uses far infrared heat, which is really great. Penetrates the skin. Incredible for pulling those fat soluble toxins and poisons. By oscillating the fat cells so that you literally sweat these things out through your skin. And during the winter months, I just love it. So what's cool about from an Ayurvedic perspective is that your head can sit out. And so because of that, I love to watch documentaries, and it makes the time go by really quick. So I do about like a 30-minute session. So if you guys are interested in the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, email me, or there's a link on, if you guys are watching on YouTube, down in the description, or if you guys are listening on iTunes, you can get a link to the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, by typing in extremehealthradio.com/649, and I'll put a link to the Relax Far Infrared Sauna if you guys want to take a look at that as well. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll bring this up here, our little Bellicon rebounder. So this is really great for lymphatic system drainage and lymph fluid. And you have more lymphatic fluid in your body than you do blood, which is really interesting. And the lymphatics is where the body cleanses and detoxifies and stores some of these toxins. So what I'll do is I will go and jump for about 30 minutes outside in the sun with my little Bellicon here. And then after that, I will jump in the rebounder or jump in the sauna and sweat out that way. And let me play a little clip here, if we can get it playing, of Dr. Lindsay Duncan talking about rebounding. Okay, for some reason it's not working, but it's just one of the best things. So this rebounder here, this Bellicon, I used to use one of those cheap ones from Walmart, and I tore my ACL, wasn't able to use it. And then I got this Bellicon, which uses flexi ropes, which are silent. And I was able to do it with a torn ACL. And so it's really great. They come with like little stands, foldable legs. You can kind of just fold them up, put them underneath your bed. You can jump every day on them if the kids are sleeping, after your husband or wife goes to bed, if you're doing it in the evening. And I love these ropes too, because they're completely silent. And here's a little picture of me with mine when we first got it, and our little puppy dog, and then Kate jumping on it as well. And I cannot recommend these enough. I just think that they're just incredible. And to bring these things into your home is really great too. So consider getting a Bellicon rebounder and a Relax Far Infrared sauna. I think you guys will really enjoy bringing these into your home and bringing this sort of detoxification lifestyle back into your home. And let me go back over to the chat room and see if you guys are chatting. Okay, got a few questions here. Let me bring Dr. Cowden back on, and maybe we can tackle some of these questions coming in from the chat rooms. Let me bring him up here. Okay, there he is. Okay, so Doc, are you a fan of sweating and rebounding and detox and all that kind of stuff as well?
Absolutely. Yep. I think those are very helpful. I mean, some patients with neurological disease have so much impairment functionally that they can't stand upright and bounce on a rebounder. Mm-hmm. So what I have them do is sit down on the rebounder, and somebody stands beside their, puts one foot on either side of their butt and bounces up and down while the patient's sitting there getting the bounce, and that works pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And sauna is great too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to do sauna therapy, you really need to do a cold shower like the other fellow was talking about immediately after. Don't let your body cool down to room air, but just as soon as you jump out of the sauna, immediately jump into the luke cold shower. Don't use the hot water, but use the cold water. And a good quality Fisher soap, and it'll bind the toxins around the skin, carry those down the drain, and they don't get reabsorbed.
Oh, okay. So you want to end on the cold, is that right?
Yeah. The other thing I do is I have patients put a tablespoon of a healthy oil in their mouth during the last 4 or 5 minutes that they're in the sauna, and swish that around, because at that moment they have the highest amount of toxins in the bloodstream that they will have. And so the oil that's in the mouth attracts the fat-soluble toxins that are in the bloodstream, and traps those in the mouth in the oil, and then you walk past the flushing toilet and spit the oil in the toilet before you jump into the shower.
Now that is interesting. So I've been doing a lot of oil pulling lately, and I usually do it before bed. And so sometimes I'll most likely do my sauna during the daytime, and then I'll do the oil pulling before bed after I brush my teeth. No good?
Nope, not the best. So the best time to do oil pulling is during the last 4 or 5 minutes of the sauna, or when you wake up in the morning after you've been in under the covers all night. You'll have the highest amount of toxins in your bloodstream spontaneously. So then if you put the oil in, have the oil in a little glass right beside the bedside without having to get up and go to the refrigerator or where to get it, you just put that oil in the mouth, swish it around for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then walk past the flushing toilet and spit it down. If you spit into a toilet that's not flushing, it's going to make a terrible mess in there. But as long as the toilet is flushing, it'll go down.
Interesting. I like your idea about doing it while you're in the sauna, though. That sounds like something I could do. So why is that? There's more toxins floating around your system when you're doing a sauna?
Yeah, in the bloodstream. And so the entire blood circulation passes by the mouth about once every minute. And so if you're just taking the oil in the mouth during that last 3 or 4 minutes, you get, I call it 3 oil changes. Three cycles of the blood passing past the buccal mucosa of the mouth, and toxins coming through the lining of the mouth into the oil and getting trapped there.
I like that. Okay, that's good. There's a quote from Oprah that said, when you know better, you do better. So that little tidbit I picked up there, I like that. So I'm going to start doing the oil pulling after the sauna or during the sauna. Okay, so we got a few questions here. You want to take a couple questions from the chat room, Doc?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Oh, someone wants to know how to spell Dr. Nunley. It's Nunnally. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a link. We just did a video with him a couple days ago, and his website is healthysmilesforlife.com. Great guy. I love promoting him. He's just such a nice guy. Redbird wants to know about taking iodine. What are your thoughts about that, Doc?
Well, most people can tolerate iodine and benefit from it. There's a few people that have sensitivity to it, and those people probably need to be desensitized for it before they start taking it. I usually start iodine on the skin, and that is a safer way to do it. So you do 1 drop on the skin, and then if they tolerate that well, then the next day 2 drops on the skin, the next day 3, next day 4. When they built up on the 10th day to 10 drops, that's approximately equivalent to 1 drop orally. Okay. And so then after the 10th day, they can just switch over to 1 drop orally and mix it with an ounce of water, and then chase it down with some more water so that the iodine doesn't stain the teeth. You do it when you first wake up in the morning, and you can take it simultaneous with proteolytic enzymes, which is also probably a really good idea for most people to try to prevent cancer and chronic neurological diseases and so on.
So combine that with proteolytic enzymes. Sorry, so you said combine that with proteolytic enzymes.
Yes.
Is that kind of the idea that, what was his name, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez? Is that kind of based on his kind of work?
Well, yeah. I actually learned it from Dr. William Kelly, who was the dentist in Grapevine, Texas, that Nicholas Gonzalez learned his thing from.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Now, as far as the proteolytic enzymes, I think Dr. Gonzalez mentioned Nutricology, or is there any kind of special ones that you want to make sure you take?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Gonzalez spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out which enzymes are going to give you the best results. And so it's not just any old enzymes, but the Nutricology was a higher purity of enzyme, and it also had chymotrypsin added in higher levels.
Oh, okay.
Chymotrypsin is one of the more important enzymes for reversing cancer. So, if you're trying to reverse neurological disease, the chymotrypsin probably is not as important. But I usually, for neurological disease, rotate either bromelain or papaya leaf enzyme or serrapeptase or nattokinase or lumbrokinase.
Okay.
And if you rotate them, then you're less likely to develop an allergy to any of the proteins from which they're derived.
Okay. And what's the strategy behind adding those enzymes with the iodine, like you mentioned?
Well, just the time of the day. The iodine is a strong oxidant, and so if you take the iodine with close to any other antioxidants, it's going to neutralize the antioxidant effect of those other supplements.
Oh, I see.
And it does not make the enzymes less effective, but it can make vitamin E and C, beta carotene, and carotenoids, and bioflavonoids, and all those other antioxidants a lot less effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we'll go take a couple more questions from the chat room. I want to make sure that we focus the questions, if possible, to neurological and brain health, because I know that Doc has a lot of different protocols for different diseases, but in today's show, we're going to focus mostly on neurological issues. Okay, so we got the iodine infection. Okay, so here Candace wants to know infections such as mycoplasma. How does that affect brain health?
Yeah, well, there's a variety of microbes that affect brain health, and we know that patients that have autism have more more mycoplasma in the brain. Patients with MS have more mycoplasma in the brain. Patients with Alzheimer's dementia have more mycoplasma in the brain. So it depends on the individual which microbe is causing the bulk of the inflammation that results in the symptom for that particular condition. Dr. Judith McCloskey in Switzerland did autopsies on a large number of patients that died from Alzheimer's dementia, and found that 90% of them had a spirochete growing in their brain, compared to just a tiny percentage of patients that died that died at the same age without Alzheimer's dementia. And so it appears that the spirochetes are causing the condition. Now the condition, apparently the condition is resulting from an inflammatory response in response to the microbes. And 25% of those patients that McCloskey did autopsies on had Borrelia, and the other 65% had dental spirochetes. So Treponema species mostly that were found, contaminating the periodontal tissue.
Yeah, man. When we were just there with Dr. Nunley in Texas, he was showing us some slides, and we got some slides of my wife, and there were some spirochetes there, and he said it's pretty normal to have some, but then some people, just their whole TV screen is just filled with these spirochetes, and it just blew my mind to see that these things are actually living in people's gums and their tissue. It's crazy.
Yeah, the first neurological disease that was recognized to be caused by a spirochetal bacteria was syphilis. So syphilis is infection of the brain with tertiary syphilis is infection of the brain with Treponema pallidum. But there's a variety of other Treponema species that are found in the mouth that are not syphilis, that still cause severe neurological problem.
It's crazy. So crazy. Some people are going back and forth in the chat room with regards to the iodine that you mentioned, and some people are saying make sure to check out for fake iodines, and some people say the nascent iodine or the Lugols. Which kind of iodine do you recommend, if it's oral or on your skin, do you think?
Yeah, well, the human body needs both iodine and potassium iodide for health. Different tissues in the body require one and others require the other. And so Lugol's has both, and that's why I use it most often. And I use the liquid iodine because if you take a tablet of any of the iodines, iodine or potassium iodide in the tablet form, the tablet rolls down through the gut, kills off a lot of the friendly bacteria before it's finally broken down and absorbed. So you're disrupting the gut, friendly flora in the gut by taking it in a tablet form. If you take it in a liquid form orally, then the vast majority of that's absorbed in the mouth and the esophagus or the stomach, and almost none of it makes it into the small intestine to kill off friendly bacteria. So that's in my opinion a better way to go. And I use the topical application initially just to make sure that the patient's not going to have excessive reaction from taking iodine. Again, one drop topically is equivalent to about 1/10 of a drop orally. Usually I use the 2% Lugol's iodine that you buy online. And the iodine is going to push out of the body chlorine and fluoride and bromide, which have been accumulating in the body because of the water supply and the food supply. And those other halides are mimickers, but they don't have the action inside the cell in the thyroid to make thyroid hormone properly. So you're developing dysfunction of your thyroid gland as a result of taking the wrong one. Iodine is also a cofactor for several of the steroidal hormones to bind to the cell and have proper action inside the cell.
Are you on board with the work of Dr. Brownstein and doing higher doses of iodine than most people sort of recommend?
Yes, primarily because in the United States we have chlorine in almost every major municipal water supply. We also have fluoride, which is completely unnecessary and probably should be outlawed and banned from the water supply because it doesn't doesn't reduce the number of caries. There's not a single research article in the entire world literature that I'm aware of that shows that that fluoride added to the water supply changes caries in the teeth. So all that came out of the Second World War. Basically, at the end of the Second World War, they had a bunch of fluoride that the Germans were using to make their people more docile, and they decided that would be a good thing to add to the water supply over here to do the same thing. Now, the bromine is found in most wheat products. It's also found in most sodas, and so if you're drinking sodas or eating wheat, you're getting bromine, even if you're bathing in non-chlorinated water and drinking non-fluoridated water. So any one of those three, create trouble for the health, and the iodine helps to push that out.
It's fascinating that with wheat, I didn't know that about sodas and drinks like that, but with wheat, I knew about that. But it's fascinating that they actually remove that from the wheat so that they can make the bread look white. So you remove, whatever good component there is there, and then you replace it with bromine, like you were saying, and that actually damages the thyroid. And then you sort of knead that same dough with municipal water that has fluoride in it. And then just in a standard piece of bread, God knows what you're getting, it's it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, most people would be a lot healthier if they never ate any bread.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Let's go to the chat room and see if there's any other questions here. Okay, so we talked about Lugol's. How do you deal with someone wants to know about how do we deal with healing the actual spirochetes that you mentioned in the brain? How do we go about healing that?
Yeah, there's a multitude of research articles from 1989 up through 2005. I just haven't looked since 2005 to see additional articles, but those articles say that pharmaceutical antibiotics do not resolve the Lyme in the brain or in the body, period. Because of the pleomorphic nature of the microbes, their ability to hide as round body forms or as biofilm forms. And Dr. Eva Sapi at the University of New Haven, Connecticut, did a research study, in vitro study, where she exposed culture plates of Borrelia to doxycycline, which is the most common antibiotic used to treat Lyme disease, borreliosis, and found that the doxycycline was effective against the spirochetes, but not against the round body form of the Borrelia, nor against the biofilm form of the Borrelia. But a variety of herbals were quite effective against all three forms. And those forms are being used by the Nutrimatics company to help patients resolve chronic Lyme disease whenever the antibiotics fail. And it works about 80% of the time whenever antibiotics fail, according to the research done by Dr. Horowitz in New York and also by a doctor over in Germany, Dr. Schwarzbach.
Yeah, it's all so intricately connected here. Let's see. Someone wants to know about glyphosates. Like, what are the role of glyphosates? And there's been a couple people that have been on our show that have talked about getting rid of and detoxifying glyphosate, and I can share those after your answer. But she wants to know, like, what is the glyphosate's role in brain health, and how can you, if possible, detoxify glyphosate?
Well, glyphosate is a water-soluble chemical, not a fat-soluble one like a lot of the pesticides and herbicides that are in the marketplace. So, the body does detoxify it better than a lot of those other pesticides and herbicides, but it's just found in such massive amounts. Last year in the United States, there was well over 1 billion pounds of Roundup sprayed in the air in the United States. And so, statistically speaking, if it rained, there was a 70% chance there was Roundup in the rain. So there really is no such thing as organic anymore unless your organic produce is being grown inside of a greenhouse with charcoal air intakes on the greenhouse. So we're all getting exposed to massive amounts of it. They intentionally spray wheat with Roundup before it's harvested because the the Roundup causes the wheat to lean over in the field, and then the harvester comes along and is able to gather more of the wheat berries as a result of the wheat stalks leaning over in a certain way, and they can actually get 2 crops per year in a lot of parts of the country, 2 crops of wheat per year if they do it with Roundup. If they do it without Roundup, it's only 1 crop of wheat per year. So they're doubling their profits for the sake, at great expense to the people that are eating the wheat. And wheat Roundup is sprayed heavily in the cotton also to get rid of the leaves off of the cotton plant, so that when they harvest the cotton, they get more of the fiber and less of the leaves into the final product. The problem with that is that one of the most common foods fed to cattle in feedlots is cottonseed. And so cottonseed is heavily concentrated with Roundup, and the beef eat it concentrated into their bodies, and then we eat the beef and concentrate it in our bodies. So it's a big problem, and glyphosate is similar to glycine in its structure, and so it incorporates itself probably in several of the proteins and peptides in our body where glycine is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And so then the Roundup is causing a perturbation of the structure of that protein so that it doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fascinating substance and story about what's going on with glyphosate. We did a whole show with Stephanie Seneff a while back, and she talked a lot about it. But here are a couple of solutions that may be worth looking into. M. Sconce in the chat room. Stephanie Seneff mentioned apple cider vinegar with regards to glyphosate. And then there's obviously a product by Dr. Zach Bush called Restore, and they make some claims on that. I think I'm not sure exactly what the role is of Restore, but it was made in defense of glyphosate. And then there's another product, a couple other products, one called Bifido and one called Chobide from Living Streams Probiotics. We have those ones in our store, and the owner of that company uses these special bacteria to break that down in your body. And I'm not making any claims here, but I'm just saying that these are what some other people have said, so it might be worth looking into some of that stuff. But Dr. Cowden, I wanted. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
As far as the Restore, does have some pretty good science behind it. It shows that people that take Restore about 20 or 30 minutes before they eat a meal that has Roundup in it have less disruption in their gut barrier, so they don't get leaky gut as much. They don't get toxins and other particles through the gut wall into the bloodstream as much.
Interesting.
So I think there's a benefit from that, and also the Restore helps to reduce the disruption of the gut barrier that's caused by glutens from gluten grains.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going to have Dr. Bush on the show pretty soon, and talk about how it affects those tight junctions inside the intestinal wall. But in your practice, do you work with it, and does it seem to get good results for people?
I do use Restore fairly often in patients, and if a patient has a greenhouse with their produce being produced inside the greenhouse with charcoal air intakes, then I don't bother. But if they're eating at a restaurant, they take the Roundup, the Restore before they go to the restaurant, so they hopefully reduce the effect of Roundup on the gut.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's that guy who's the owner of Living Streams. His name's Wayne Blakely, and he talks about his couple products, Chobide and Bifido, with regards to glyphosate. So, stuff to look into. There's, what's great in today's culture is that there's always solutions, and 2019, there's a lot of stuff coming at us, but there's always good solutions for us as well if we're willing to do the research and look into things. Doc, I wanted to ask you about kind of going all the way back to the beginning of the show when I asked you about, what did I ask you about? I think it was about EMF, and you said it was in the top 5. If you had to pick a top 5 for neurological health and avoiding all of these neurological issues, what would the top 5 things to be to get rid of your life? Get rid of out of your life, do you think?
I would say buried subconscious emotions are in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
The toxins that come out of the jaw where there's improperly extracted teeth, which is 99% of the wisdom teeth that are extracted improperly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the toxins that come out of the jaw where there's root canal teeth. And then there's mercury. And one of the more common sources of that is the teeth. Those are for sure in the top 5. I would say also there's a strong contribution from microbes, from Borrelia, from other spirochetes, from mycoplasma, chlamydia, from a variety of viruses that disrupt the function of the brain, especially I would say the retroviruses that are those other than HIV, the one that's thought to be a contributor to AIDS. There's a lot of cousins of the HIV that are significant problems in the brain function. And then let's say also just the total body load concept. Where you have some people are airline pilots and they're getting a massive amount of jet fuel every time they fly, and the radiation, gamma radiation, EMF is having a negative effect in almost every patient with neurological disease by some of the concepts that Dr. Paul mentioned, and
Mm-hmm.
disruption of the brain barrier, and then I think mold and mycotoxins from what we call sick building syndrome is a huge issue for most patients with neurological disease.
That makes sense. I wanted to ask you about this one too, because we talked about fluoride a little bit. We talked about mercury, glyphosate, but what about monosodium glutamate, MSG, and is that being an excitotoxin? And is that really as big of a deal as most people talk about, do you think, for brain health?
It is a very big deal, and it's a flavor enhancer, which we could all live better without.
Right.
But, since you have to watch like a hawk for that food stuff in your foods that you get at a restaurant, you have to read labels. If you go online and say into Google search, tell me all the other names of the MSG, you'll get about 30 hits, 30 different names that it goes by. And so you got to watch for all those names on products that you buy at the store if they're, packaged and man-made, because oftentimes they have the flavor enhancers, salsas and soy sauce and all kinds of other stuff. And the MSG is causing us stimulation of the N-methyl D-aspartate receptor in the brain and causing calcium to flood into the cells as a result of that. And then the cells get a free radical effect and a disruption of the channels, the calcium channels in the cell, and lots of other chronic disruption of neurological function as a result of that exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. I want to go over a few things that we can do to support, like we're talking about before, how unsexy it is to talk about prevention, but I want to talk a little bit about some things that we can do to support our brain health as we age, in closing out the show, so it's not all doom and gloom. But before that, so Rob in the chat room wants to know your thoughts about hyperbaric chambers with regards to brain health.
Hyperbaric oxygen can be helpful, especially if done in conjunction with other therapies. But there's a lot of patients that have neurological disease that have so many other things going on, mm-hmm. that hyperbaric by itself will have probably little effect. Just know this, that whenever you do hyperbaric therapy, sometimes you're going to, you're severely antioxidant depleted, you're going to get some oxygen-free radicals formed as a result of doing hyperbaric. And if you've got genetic SNPs from the retroviruses and other problems that mess up our genetics, then you'll have a harder time quenching those free radicals that are formed. So you might have a defect in your glutathione production or your superoxide dismutase or other stuff. So it's important to make sure that you take antioxidant nutrients prior to getting in the hyperbaric chamber, and also when you come out of the hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in closing out the show here, I'm curious what we can give people with regards to like lifestyle changes, some good habits they could get into, and maybe even some herbs or some foods they can do to help prevent these neurological diseases and things. Like what are some of the top therapies or treatments that people could do, and then some foods that might be supportive of this?
Yeah, well, I would say one that gets overlooked a lot is just improving your electromagnetic environment so that you're not getting pounded by Wi-Fi all night long. So unplug your Wi-Fi at night. Turn off the breakers that go to your bedroom at night. Make sure your cell phone's at least 30 feet from the bed and not zapping you during the night. Make sure you don't have a cordless phone. Switch that out for a corded phone in your house. And so on. If you have a radio frequency burglar alarm system, they get a wired radio frequency. A wired burglar alarm system, not radio frequency. And I would say another one is cleaning up the diet. Most Americans eat what I call the SAD diet, Standard American Degenerative Diet, and so they're going to have degeneration of the neurological system because of the food choices that you're making. So there's some foods that are really good for the brain and some other foods that are really bad for the brain. The very worst foods for the brain are the I call them frankenfood oils. That would be like margarine, and I don't think any thinking person should consume any kind of peanut product because it has lots of aflatoxins, very long chain fatty acids, and a lot of arachidonic acid, which is pro-inflammatory. So stay away from peanuts. Canola oil has very long chain fatty acids and probably should be avoided. So you want to read labels and stay away from that. Take in healthy oils. Like walnut and almond and macadamia nut and olive oil and other good oils. In other words, doing I call it oil change periodically, putting in some good oils that push out the bad oils, and then I think that and don't forget the oils from the fish, the EPA, DHA. My preference is actually probably a really clean krill oil harvested down in Antarctica, so you don't have the mercury and the pesticides and herbicides and PCBs and all that other stuff that you have if you get a fish caught off the U.S. coast that you process and make into an oil.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
Some fat soluble antioxidants, along with that, because the oils tend to acidify if you just put them in the gut without any antioxidants along with it.
Yeah, we should theoretically be able to live all the days of our life, right, with a fully functional brain and a neurological system that works, and so it's obvious that we're doing something wrong in our culture, whether it's the food that we're putting in, like we talked about with fluoride and MSG and all that, glyphosate, and then some dietary or some lifestyle changes that we're clearly disconnected from the way we should be living, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing, right, with cancer, fibromyalgia, and all the diseases that that you work with, right?
Yeah. Learn about homeoprophylaxis. So that's a way to prevent illness using homeopathy. And there was just for your listeners that are not aware of it, there was an epidemic, an outbreak of meningococcal meningitis in Brazil in 1978. And they had no vaccine to give, so they gave the about 18,000 patients homeopathic remedies to try to prevent the meningococcal meningitis, and it reduced the incidence in that population by 94% compared to the population that did not get the homeoprophylaxis. in the early 90s, they had another outbreak of meningococcal meningitis down there, and they gave 65,000 patients the homeoprophylaxis for preventing meningococcal meningitis. That time, it found that it reduced the incidence of that illness by about 94% again. So, I think that's a pretty good test.
Yeah, my goodness. Wow. It's amazing how many different things there are out there, right? And it seems like we're still continuing to learn more and more, right? New therapies and new treatments, and things are being studied. It's amazing what's going on out there.
Yeah, I understand a lot of people want to have some type of vaccine prevention, but if you can get that degree of illness reduction with a homeopathic, why not use that? It has zero side effects, and it's been proven in 2 large studies to work against meningococcal meningitis. Dr. Isaac Golden in Australia showed that it works against childhood illnesses. The research from India and Japan and other countries shows that it works for other things. There's great research on it in Cuba for leptospirosis. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
we should learn these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So before we went on live today, you were telling me about some events that you have coming up, and you have a lot of cool things that are happening. And for those that are interested, Dr. Cowden's website is acimconnect.com. And Doc, why don't you tell people a little bit about? I think there's like 3 or 4 events coming up, right?
Yeah. Well, we have I call it a rapid cleanse in Santa Barbara, California. I think that cleanse is booked up, but we have another one in Prescott, Arizona in April, and that one still has some slots available. But that cleanse is for resolving severe chronic diseases. I developed it in 1990 to get rid of toxicity in patients that had silicone implant disease. So a couple of Hollywood movie stars came to try to get their life back. They had such severe brain fog they couldn't remember their acting lines. They had excruciating pain in the joints from silicone that got into the joints. And so I developed it initially for that, but then a few years later I had a patient that had silicone implant disease and asbestosis, and we saw little spicules coming out of the skin on those patients. On that patient, then we've had some others since then that had asbestosis, and as far as I know, it's the only thing that gets out of the body, silicone and asbestos. When I had colon cancer and prostate cancer in 1994, I used the rapid cleanse to rapidly recover my health, and I did that instead of doing, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, etc. And so it's just a pretty effective cleanse. And then in November, we're having a big event down in Orlando, Florida. The event in Orlando, Florida is a conference, 2 different conferences simultaneously. One for the health professionals. Mm-hmm. That's a 3-day conference, the 14th, 15th, 16th, and one for the public, the 15th and 16th, the Friday and Saturday. And I've had, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've had more than a dozen physicians come up to me at the end of the conference that we have down there and say, "This is absolutely the best conference I've ever been to in my life." And most of them go to many conferences every year, and so saying that is quite a compliment. Those that want to try to get a hold of someone for the cleanse, they would contact Michelle Manjares, and I think you have her phone number. I can pull it back up again if you don't.
Yeah, I do have it. Let me see if I can read this off really quickly. Her phone number is, I wrote it down, 305-458-5284. Is that correct?
Yeah, so people that want to go to that rapid cleanse over in Prescott, Arizona, would contact her, and then the conference information for the conference down in Florida will be up, I think, in the next couple of weeks on the website. I like to have enough information, about who's going to speak and what they're going to speak about before we put it up on our website. Mm-hmm. but that's going to be a great event, and we'll have a big blast down there.
There you go.
Also,
that's so great. So I want to let people know, if people want to connect with you, can they do that? Do you work with people remotely, or what's your sort of practice working with people these days?
well, yeah, I did remote work one time with a patient, and in a state where I was not licensed, and it cost me $5,000 to deal with that.
Gosh.
So I don't do that. But I see patients out in Phoenix, Arizona. So somebody that wanted to come to Arizona, where I'm licensed, could do that. And Nancy is the person that they would contact for that purpose. And Nancy's phone number is 928-897-9989. And so we see all kinds of interesting patients out there, but I call them mostly adult chronic failure to thrive.
Yeah.
So some of them have neurological disease, some of them have cancer, some of them have other mysterious illnesses that the allopathic medical community hadn't been able to figure out. But we get pretty good results for those. Probably well over 80% of them are markedly improved in a few months.
My goodness. Now, when I was reading your bio, starting the show, it says that you have refined treatment protocols for cancer, Lyme, autism, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, as well as heart issues. If people want to get access to those protocols, like where would someone do that?
Well, we have a lot of information on the acimconnect.com website. So the first thing I would suggest everybody listening to do is that they become a free member in our Academy website, since it's the right price.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're a free member on there, then they can actually go to the catalog and search for free webinars and stuff that we've done that are archived, so they can actually get quite a bit of free educational information by doing that. And then if they type into the search window a topic that they're interested in, if the cost of the course is not too much, then they buy a course and learn by hearing the audio and video information, watching the PowerPoint slides and whatever else is on there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So ACIM Connect. Doc, thanks so much for your time today and for your work and helping people and doing all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. So just keep it up. We need to get the word out.
Thank you so much. And when you see Dr. Nunley at the next conference you go to, tell him we said hello.
I'll do it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Doc. I'll be in contact via email with the link to the show as soon as it's posted.
All right. Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Doc. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. There you go, Dr. William Lee Cowden. What did you guys think? Interesting, right? Medical doctor? Somehow it's interesting. It always is fascinating to me whenever let me get rid of those earbuds. It's always fascinating to me whenever you get someone like him who is a medical doctor, but somehow he has the thoughts in his head that he does, because it's really fascinating. I don't know about you guys, but have you guys ever run into a medical doctor that is sort of in transition? You know what I mean? Like someone who is like open-minded and they're in the process of transitioning into a natural sort of base practice. I don't know about you, but I've only ran into one. And this was the surgeon who performed our emergency C-section surgery with my wife, Kate, and our two twins. And he talked about a guy that was basically his idea was he wants to stay working in the hospital to sort of create change from within. But I don't know about you. Whenever I talk to a medical doctor, most medical doctors that I've talked to, now I could be wrong and I could be not indicative of all doctors, all medical doctors everywhere, but the doctors that I come across are always very, very dogmatic. They're very much know-it-all. They have the answers for everything. They're very locked into this Newtonian, corporeal, physical makeup of our life with, placebo studies and, all this stuff. And it's really cool to have people on the show like this Dr. Lee Cowden, who's a medical doctor, and somehow he came out of all that. And we had another doctor, Dr. Richard Massey, who's the same way, who's one of my mentors and friends. We've got a lot of his content inside the Extreme Health Academy. He talks a lot about the spiritual emotional connection, just like Dr. Lee Cowden. But also, we did a recent show with, oh my goodness, a cardiologist. I forget what his name was. He was in our YouTube show. If you look at our YouTube videos recently, he was a board-certified cardiologist as well, who thinks a lot like this. And so it's really cool. Maybe people are waking up, and so I hope you guys enjoyed that show. I wanted to tell you guys about a couple, I've got a couple things I want to share with you, but before I do that, I want to share with you actually some of this interesting product, Stockton Aloe 1. Have you guys tried this? If you haven't tried it, I'm telling you guys, make sure to check this stuff out. It's really awesome. And aloe vera is like the original superfood of mankind on the earth, and aloe vera is tremendous thing that I believe that we should all be on an ongoing basis forever, because of what it does to your intestinal tract, what it does to your lowering inflammation in the body. It's antibacterial, it's antimicrobial, it's antifungal. It helps basically restore and repair your digestive tract, your alimentary canal, and it's just an incredible, but it also has all kinds of enzymes, over 75 different enzymes and vitamins and nutrients and minerals in this Stockton Aloe 1. And what's cool is it's completely raw. It's flash frozen. So what they do is they hand harvest it. They don't process it in any way, and then they ship it to you. And they don't even ship it to you during the weekends, because they don't want it thawing out. But I mean, talk about an amazing superfood. If you're watching on YouTube, I mean, look at the way that looks, and that gel going through your body every single day is such a great thing for your digestion. It's just an incredible. And here's Dr. Donnie Wilson. She talked a little bit about aloe vera and what it does to the body, and check out what she had to say about it with regards to leaky gut.
And then I encourage, we can talk more. We can talk more about this. What do I do to help people speed up the healing of leaky gut?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned aloe before,
Mm-hmm.
and that is one of the herbs that I definitely recommend, using for helping to heal leaky gut. You want to use herbs that are anti-inflammatory and soothing and healing to the intestinal lining. So aloe is a great one.
Yeah, it's one of the best things that you can do for your gut. Bone broth is also really good. L-glutamine, the colostrum, and getting on maybe the Dr. Gundry protocol and bringing in some of these amazing foods into your diet to help heal and restore gut motility, peristalsis. I mean, it's just so much to do with the gut, and I'm just such a big fan of what the Stockton Aloe 1 is and what it does and how it affects the body. It's just really tremendous. And so I'm just a huge, big fan of it. And something else too that we're talking about recently is these Magnetico mattress pads. These things, I can't tell you how much I'm a fan of these things. So if you guys are familiar with our work here, you know that really it's all about light, water, and magnetism, and how our body produces ATP and energy, and it allows electrons to travel across the mitochondrial membrane, creating ATP and energy in the body, so that we can actually have the energy to fight off these bacteria, to create stomach acid, to have energy to repair ourselves, and to be able to have the cells replicate without losing too much of the telomere length and all of that stuff, and deal with toxins. And so the way the body does that is through magnetism, and light, water, magnetism really is the basis of our beings. And it was just an interesting quote by Nikola Tesla back in the day. He said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's why I love sleeping on these Magnetico mattress pads. These things are like, gosh, I think they're 75 to 100 pounds each, and they have over 1,200 magnets in these pads that you sleep on, and bathing your body in a magnetic field to sort of ward off the damaging effects of EMF and 5G and wireless and dirty electricity and stuff like that is tremendous. And so here's a little clip from our friend Jason Prawl talking about the Magnetico as well.
I just heard those devices that you had during the break, by the way, and I actually want to add to that, because that's really cool stuff. I actually have the Magnetico sleep pad myself. I've got the 20 Gauss. It actually is really important. And what's happening is with the Earth, according to research and some pretty good science, that the poles are actually wandering. Instead of being sort of perfectly aligned and opposite of each other, there's multiple poles on the north and south, and they're actually wandering around. And basically what that does is it decreases magnetism around the Earth, but it does so in an uneven way, in an undistributed way. So it's not exactly uniform around the planet. What's happening is we are getting extra solar energies coming to the Earth. So we're actually seeing like UVC is now increasing on the planet. Because of our magnetic field, our magnetic shield is not as protective. So it's really interesting stuff what's happening as we're moving into new parts of the galaxy, and we're getting new energies, and all this stuff is changing. So I actually have a Magnetico sleep pad.
Yeah, and so do we. We have he sort of one-upped us. Jason's one-up us. He's got the 20 Gauss. We only have the 10 Gauss. And so there's a lot of studies, like he was talking about, magnetic fields lowering as time goes on. There's some studies that are saying now that the magnetic field over the last 4,000 years has decreased by 80%, which is crazy. And, people have written down about how the Babylonian Empire, the magnetic field was 3 to 5 Gauss. And now it's about 0.5. And so oxygen is lower, air pressure is lower, magnetism is lower. And so all of these things our body uses as part of its circadian biology to be able to figure out what kind of body to create. And so bathing your body in a magnetic field is just awesome. And we love ours. We're going to upgrade ours. Here's a picture of ours, actually, if you guys want to see it, from our Instagram page. And that was Kate. That was when we just installed it or put it underneath our bed. And that was Kate when she was pregnant. And she was sitting on the magnetic pad. And so it's just a really great piece of equipment. And I'm really happy. We did a whole show with Dr. Dean Bonley, if you guys want to check it out. And you can learn more about the science behind it. But the good folks over at Magnetico were able to give us a 10% discount. So if you want to get 10% off, use the code EHR10. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, there's a link to this product page, the Magnetico Sleep Pad, as well as the Stockton Aloe-1, the Bellicon Rebounder, and the Relax Far Infrared Sauna on the in the description below. But if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or something like that, you're listening on a podcast. And the podcast number for today's show will be extremehealthradio.com/649. So if you want to get access to any of those products, just go to extremehealthradio.com/649, and you can always email me as well, and I can help you out with any questions that you might have. And let me dive on over to the chat room. We're probably going to be lowering down or taking off here pretty quickly, but I just wanted to see if you guys had any questions for me. Dr. Bonley's still alive. Yeah, Brendan, I just talked with him, recently, before we went on our trip to Texas to see Dr. Stuart Nunley, our biological dentist. I just spoke with them, and as far as I know, unless something's happened recently that I don't know about, Dr. Bonley, as far as I know, is still alive. I work a lot with Marilyn over there too, and she's a great resource over at the Magnetico company. Just great people over there. I love supporting great people doing good work. B-Light says there's a shift happening for sure as more and more people are waking up to the benefits of natural medicine. Yeah, I believe so. I think that's what's really awesome for people in today's world, being able to create a show like this and have people watch it, and podcasts that are out that are just really give me a lot of hope, because, each podcast may have thousands or hundreds of thousands of listeners, and all of those people are now sharing and learning. And, like way back in the day, like when were you ever able to, like if you were someone who really loved woodworking, or you were someone who really loved knitting, or like Alf or something like that, like when were you able to really find a podcast that really dives into the very niche subject matter that you're interested in, and I'm so encouraged by the ability these days for all of us to be able to spread information. And the more information we have, the more choices we have. And the more choices we have, the more power we have. And when we have power, then we start realizing that, it's not concentrated. And there are not these guys in white lab coats that know more about our body than we do. Because, frankly, doctors who are in white lab coats and trying to help you, they are not looking at the latest research. And they're definitely not looking at the research that's in the alternative and all the studies that are being done in the natural field, for sure, because those things don't coincide with their worldview. So not only are they not looking at the updated latest research in their own profession, in their own medical paradigm, but they're not even looking at all at the research that's being done on the natural side. And so that's why when you guys and me go see doctors like that, they don't like empowered patients at all. And so a patient that asks a lot of questions is not something that they particularly like. And so that's why I encourage you guys to avoid giving your power away to any doctor or to any authority figure or anybody. We ultimately have the power and the authority ourselves. If we just trust ourselves enough and understand who we are, why we're here, what we're doing, and where we're going, if we understand the answers to those questions, then anything that other people could tell us is just words. It's just sound vibrations coming out of a mouth of a person. It doesn't have any relevance or meaning to you because you know what works for you. And that's really the goal of our show here, is to enlighten all of us, and myself as well, because I get tidbits from every show as well, to enlighten all of us that there are choices out there. And once we realize there's more choices, like I said, then we have more power, more options. And that's where real autonomy comes from, is when understanding that you are in control of your own health, and your health is a manifestation of your own thinking and your subconscious mind. Your physical reality is the manifestation of what you have going on internally, right? And so that goes with our health, our lifestyle, where we live, the partners we have, the jobs we do, the kind of lifestyle we live, and the direction we're going. All of that is a manifestation of what we believe in our subconscious mind, in our internal mind. And so that's why doctors and people that are perceived authority figures, they can't tell you why you're here, what you're doing, what the real root cause of your disease might be, because all they can look at is the biology, the physical aspects of what's going on. And so that's why I'm such a big fan of personal development, improvement, spiritual growth, all of these things to help us. Because once we have the answers to those 3 or 4 deep questions, then it doesn't really matter what, like I said before, what anybody else says, to us. Someone can say that aloe vera is not good for you at all, but if you have experience with it and you have a deep knowing inside yourself that it does really well with you, then it's going to be great for you until that day comes when your body rejects it, right? And so you're constantly looking at what your body is telling you and being in communication with that. And I think that's a big part of what we're doing in our show. And so I'm just a big fan of all of that the personal development work. Rob says, is the Magnetico mat compatible with a grounded mat? You're going to get different opinions about that. So this is the kind of weird, strange thing when it comes to this deeper esoteric way of looking at the world through this idea of light, water, and magnetisms and photons and electrons. You get a lot of differing opinions. Some people say that grounding by itself is not healthy. Some people have said that. I don't necessarily agree with that. Everything exists in nuance. There's nuance to everything. And so when someone says that grounding is not healthy, or meat is not healthy, or being a vegan is not healthy, you have to look at things in terms of like, what's the greater overall picture of what they're saying? Have they defined their terms yet? And is that true for you in your life, in your time right now? So of the people that say that grounding is healthy, let's just split those crowds into 2. Of the people that say that grounding is healthy, some people say that you should ground with the magnetism of a Magnetico, and some people say you shouldn't. I personally do not ground with the magnetic mattress pad. I figure I can get my grounding in other times of the day, whereas with the Magnetico, I can't get that in any other time of day. I can't constantly be walking on a magnetic pad like that. So I tend to take one thing at a time. So I'll do the grounding at different times of the day, personally. Like, for example, when I rebound outside, I do a lot of grounding at that time. But that's not to say that what I'm saying even is true. The only way to know is to test it yourself and see how you feel, and see how that goes. But that's just kind of like what we do. And our kids have been on. In fact, we got the Magnetico mattress pad, I think, a little ways into Kate's pregnancy. So she has been sleeping on the 10 Gauss magnetic mattress pad for the entire time of her pregnancy. And then our kids have never not slept on a magnetic mattress pad, except for the week that we were gone visiting Dr. Nunley in Marble Falls, Texas, our biological dentist. So that's the only time they've not slept on a magnetic mattress pad, which is really cool. They're sleeping great. I'm not sure if that's why, but I like to think so. Brendan says, I like his outlook on the polar shifting over the past 600 years. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that's what's going on, you know. Zenab says, yes, hello, Angie. Welcome to EMF Info and your empowerment to prevent and protect yourself, including fetus and development and children. Part 2, Angie, EMF is harmful to us adults, so imagine effect on developing fetus. Yeah, this whole thing with EMF is really frightening and shocking and enlightening, to say the least. Recently, we live next door to a church and a school. Our little neighborhood sits in between, and look for schools and churches to be putting up 5G cell towers, because what they did with this particular church, and by the way, this church, they put this cell tower right above where these kids go to school. Like literally the kids walk out their classroom and the cell tower is right next to their building. That's that 5G tower. And they're actually breaking a law because apparently it's supposed to be within 300 yards of a residential area, but it's actually 297 yards in our neighborhood. And so what they're doing is, I'm not sure the company that built the cell tower or the 5G tower, but they're paying, I believe, the church $30,000 to $40,000 a month. I heard from one of the activists who was doing, some research on it. $30,000 to $40,000 a month, and $30,000 to $40,000 a month. I mean, to anyone is big money, right? But to a church, specifically, that's huge. So I say shame on the church for accepting that without looking into it. And shame on the church for allowing them to build a cell tower right above a children's school. So that's what I'm saying is you can't trust these institutions, whether they're churches. Not saying you can't trust all churches, but I'm just saying, you got to look at the instance and what's going on. The schools, the churches, the hospitals, the doctors, the industries surrounding all this stuff. You got to look into it, because if you just go with what they say, they're going to tell you whatever story kind of helps their bottom line, right? So we have this cell tower, this 5G tower that's looming over our neighborhood. And I thank God we have the Blue Shield device from Brandon Amalani that's available in our store. We have the grounded stuff. We have we're soon going to be getting the other thing to reduce dirty electricity in the whole house, which is from Brian Hoyer. There's a whole house dirty electricity filter. We also sell the green waves, and those are really excellent too. And we, put those up in the house, and so it's just, man, this EMF thing is huge. It's bigger than any of us ever know, and I think that it's going to be an issue for a lot of people, not just because of all the health, not benefits, but all the health hazards. But gosh, I mean, what it's doing to the communication, to the environment, is massive, guys. It's massive. And so we're going to have to get more wily, get more creative, and look even more like a bizarre person, right? Because here's us, right? We got a bunch of you guys in the chat room, Brendan, Jeanette, Oscar, a lot of you amazing people in the chat room, and you're listening, and you're thinking to yourself, your family and friends think you're crazy, right? But what's crazy is that with each new environmental change, a complete 100% adoption of that change is looked at as being normal. So if the, cell phones or cell towers or fluoride in the water, complete acceptance of these environmental changes that happen and that are merely just pushed onto us because we don't have a choice, right? The complete and blind acceptance of a change in our lifestyle because everybody else is doing it is normal. Right? Now, if we don't want those things, if we don't want a smart meter, if we don't want our kids going to a school that has a cell tower right next to their classroom, if we don't want to eat genetically modified food, if we don't want to bathe our bodies in toxic blue light and we want to block blue light, if we want to make sure we're eating organic foods, if we want to make sure we're juicing and cleansing, we're basically doing that because our world is so toxic, right? That's why we have to do coffee enemas. That's why we have to do sauna therapy. That's why we have to do rebounding and getting in the sun. If you and I were just living our lifestyle and living our dream and doing what we're supposed to do in a clean world, we wouldn't have to do any of these things, right? It would just be sort of default. By living close to nature, you don't have to do any of these things. But because our world is so toxic, now we have to do, I go home, before I came here, I did our Juve red light therapy. I laid on my IMRS mat. Later today, I'm going to do my sauna. I'm going to do my rebounder. I'm going to get back into coffee enemas very soon, and doing all these cleansing and detoxification things. Like, we have to do them because the environment we're living in is so darn toxic. But if we do those things, we're looked at as weird, right? Our family and friends think we're weird. Why are we wearing orange glasses? Why are we covering our skin? Why are we doing coffee enemas? How come you always want to eat organic? Why do you concerned about radiation coming from your cell phone? Why don't you want to give your kids a cell phone? Blah, blah, blah. We're looked at as being strange. But what's really bizarre to me is that, in my opinion, everyone else is very odd for just accepting all of these unnatural environmental and lifestyle changes without ever even asking a question. People don't even ask. It's like, what's the next latest and greatest technological invention? Oh, is it robots, or is it artificial intelligence, or self-driving cars, or any of these things? It's like, okay, it's yes to everything without ever even thinking about it. And so I think that as we continue to have this blind acceptance to technological advances coming in the future, I think that we're going to have to people are going to continue to see us as bizarre, because we're going to have to start doing more, right? We're going to have to do more to cleanse and detox our bodies if we don't want to end up with these sort of diseases, right? And so people are going to be continually seeing us as weird, because we're going to have to keep doing more. But then we're going to have to start figuring out a different kind of environment to live in. And so it's getting to the point now where Kate and I are thinking about moving. And where we're going to move, I don't know, because anywhere you go, you're going to have environmental toxins. 5G is going up everywhere. When we drove back from our Dr. Stuart Nunley, our dental office in Texas, I mean, all throughout Texas and Arizona, all you saw were 5G towers everywhere. And if you followed our Instagram stories, we documented a bunch of that. And, what are we going to do with our environment? Can I move to Colorado? Can I move to Seattle? Can I move to the Oregon? All these different things. It's crazy what's going on with our environment. So if we can't move, and a lot of times we are prevented from doing so for a while, and if we can't move for a while, then what we need to do is really bone up and start becoming even weirder to our friends, and doing these things like sauna, eating clean, doing coffee enemas, doing your red light therapy, getting out in the sun, and blocking blue light, and all these things, because our world is becoming increasingly more and more toxic. So, oh man, oh man, oh man. So you guys are chit-chatting away in the chat room. It's awesome. Justin, how would you try to repair an impaired nervous system and brain? Well, there's two sides, Oscar, to all of this. There's obviously, you want to prevent and protect your body from the things that are causing that from happening, right? And then on the flip side, so while you're protecting your body from these things, you want to nourish and restore and heal your body. Because if you try to nourish and heal during the time that you're not preventing, you're not making any progress, right? It's like taking an aspirin but continuing to beat your head against the wall, right? In our case, we wouldn't take an aspirin, we would take a white willow bark, right? So taking a white willow bark while continuing to beat your head against the wall does no good. So you got to stop what's happening, the cause of it, like we're talking in today's show: fluoride, mercury fillings, EMF radiation, MSG, all these different neurological toxins. I wrote down some of the things that he was talking about. Emotional trauma, your oral health, which is like mercury fillings, cavitations, root canals, and then also mold, and getting rid of these things from your body, and doing cleanses and supporting your liver. And then reducing the amount of EMF that you're exposed to, right? So these are all things that are going to be really, really tremendous for not just preventing neurological diseases like ALS and Alzheimer's and these types of things later on in life, but also turning around a condition if you think you might have it, Parkinson's, these types of things, right? Emotions and how they play a role. Something recently I heard about Parkinson's disease was from a recall healing perspective, which I thought was really interesting. From Parkinson's, like you get the shakes, right? And if you were to magnify those shakes and then slow them down in slow motion, you see a movement of the body going from one place to another, right? The hand might move slightly, but if you magnify that and then you slow it down in slow motion, the body makes a move for something and then it pulls back, makes a move for something and then it pulls back. And so from a recall healing and emotional spiritual perspective, there's a tie-in there between things that we could have, should have, or want to do in our life, but we're too afraid to through fear, and then we pull back. So it's interesting, this tie-in here with the emotional spiritual side to our health. But then while you're getting rid of mold and EMF and all these things in your body, then you're supporting your body as well with healthy fats, restoring your body's ability to cleanse and detoxify itself. There's all kinds of things that you can do. We have a whole course about the nervous system inside the Extreme Health Academy, if you guys want to check it out, where we go into super depth about all this stuff. But obviously avoiding those foods, MSG, right? Fluoride, toxins, chemicals, all that stuff is going to impact your neurological system. Glyphosates, mercury, getting your teeth worked on, getting this stuff out of your body. And so that's all really, really important, to restoring your nervous systems, restoring your brain, and just also something to think about when it comes to, your nervous system. Our nervous system, from a recall healing perspective, most of what's on there is not ours. So if you have a weird idiosyncrasy, like, remember that movie with Jack Nicholson where he's got that weird behavior where he counts everything and he steps on all the bricks on the sidewalk. He skips a step every time he takes a step and all that kind of stuff. All these idiosyncrasies, and they call them miasms sometimes. From a recall healing perspective, we download these things in order to survive. And so we honor our parents through our nervous system. And so it's the role of the child to support and to take on and to carry the burdens of the previous generation. So whatever your parents were dealing with and struggling with, the role of the child's nervous system is to download that into their body and to support and to help those that came before us, and we do that through honoring them. And so a lot of times we take on their idiosyncrasies, we take on their energetic imprints, their miasms, we take on their weird emotional traumas, and we store them in our body, and they become physical over time. And we think that those physical things are just things that are tied to us, but in reality, they don't belong to us. And so that's something else to consider when it comes to the nervous system, right? And obviously chiropractic care is going to be, one of the best things you can do for your nervous system. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Brendan says, we need more of you, Justin, if we have more people talking about this live on social media. Yeah, well, I do my best, I'm just a regular guy, just like you, and doing my best. We all have our issues, and, I try to learn as much as I possibly can so I can bring as many different aspects to this show as I possibly can, because you guys probably know there's a lot of people talking about biohacking, a lot of people talking exclusively about light, water, and magnetism. And then there's a lot of people talking about spiritual, emotional health. And there's a lot of people talking about cleansing and detox. Some people just talk about, take my bone broth powder and my foods, right? But there's a holistic way of looking at all of this stuff, A lot of the people that are interested in light, water, magnetism aren't putting any credence or focus on the spiritual, emotional aspects of where we get these things from, right? And the people in that camp don't understand anything about the light, water, magnetism. And both those camps sometimes don't even focus too much on detoxification or oral pathology or electromagnetic field radiation. So there's so many different aspects to health and how we can reclaim our health that's been taken away from us from our environment, just because of the nature of what we say yes to as a culture, that can help take our health to new levels. And so Zenab says, Justin, isn't it sad how hard we have to work to stay healthy? So much effort. How can we stop the madness pushed and supported by government and rich companies? I talk about That's such a deep and loaded question, isn't it? How can we stop? The biggest thing that we all can do, my friends, has nothing to do with what we put in our mouth. The biggest thing that we can do is to simply unplug from the matrix. That's number one. We have to and we must stop listening to TV and watching television. We have to and we must stop listening to conventional radio. We must stop these things from coming into our psyches, because these things are reprogramming our subconscious mind. And so that's number one. If we want to make a change in the world, is unplugging from the matrix. That's so important. And then what's also important is hijacking and biohacking your nervous system. And what I like to think about that is expose yourself to information. And information isn't just like listening to audiobooks or listening to a podcast like this, or, information is also what comes into your brain via light and music and sound, right? In the beginning, God said, let there be light, right? So before light was created, sound existed. So light comes from sound, right? So, it's really important to hijack our nervous system and our subconscious mind with light and sound. So by sound, for me personally, I'll switch 90% of what I listen to are audiobooks, are podcasts, are empowering information, Jim Rohn, personal development kind of stuff. And then 10% I use music to help me feel good. And so if you follow our Instagram, I always put some song on our stories about the different shows that we've done. And so it's really important to realize that if you're feeling down, sometimes you just need music. If you're feeling empowered, what you might want are some information. For me personally, in the last probably 15, 20 years, I've spent 90% of my time listening to personal development, spiritual growth, and health stuff. This kind of combined. And then about 10% of the time, I'll listen to music. And I do that very calculated, in a very calculated way, because, if I'm feeling a little bit down, a little bit depressed, I'm not feeling as good, music is what always turns it around for me. So unplugging from the matrix is key for this, is the only key. And then starting to empower yourself, because what the system wants us to do is they want us to stay in a state of low dopamine. They want us to stay in a state that, if you're in a low dopamine state, then that means that you're easily programmable, which means that they can throw commercials at you with 700 side effects at the end of the commercial, and they can have you believe it and still go talk to your doctor because your doctor knows best, right? Because you have a low dopamine state. So it's really important. Like you said, Brendan, get outside, get your dopamine levels up, go outside, expose yourself to the full spectrum biophotons from the sun, the over 15,000 frequencies that come from the sun. There's no biological food that mimics the sun. The food is simply a repository for sun. So getting out in nature, eating food that's been in the sun is even better. And so unplugging from the matrix and really working on yourself, guys, like personal development, spiritual growth, empowering yourself with stuff, because if you don't know something exists, then you don't know what you don't know, right? And so if you don't know what you don't know, then you can be manipulated and controlled much easier through fear. In our logical mind, we can't be, because we say, no, I'm not going to allow anyone to control me, right? But fear, that's what happens when you go into a doctor. You're 30 years old, you're 20 years old, you're 50 years old, and they tell you have to go because everyone over 50 has to get this checked, right? Then you get a number checked, and then they tell you, well, some things showed up on your blood work that we're going to have to check, right? And then we're going to have to come in and get more blood work, and then we'll have to get a consultation to see what all this means, because you're not smart enough to realize what it means, right? So we'll have to have a doctor explain it to you. And then once we do that, then we can talk about treatment, right? And then if you don't do treatment, here's what's going to happen to you, right? And that's always part of the conversation as well. And of course, you don't want that to happen to you, so you go in for the next treatment. Pretty soon, you're going to see the doctor, and then you're going to see him, and then you're getting regular treatments and regular visits, and you're sucked into the paradigm through fear, right? So when you know more than your doctor does, which is very easy to do these days. It doesn't take much. You can listen to 3 or 4 of our shows, and you'll probably know more about natural health and how the body actually works than any doctor, because doctors just studying chemicals, right? Studying pharmaceuticals and how they affect the LD50. the lethal dose 50 and 50% of the population, and how those chemicals affect, the death rates. And that's all they understand is the biological processes and the chemical reactions between these pharmaceutical drugs. They don't understand how the body actually works without drugs in it. So when you start knowing more than your doctor, then you start becoming a person who can't be easily manipulated, and you're an empowered patient. And an empowered patient doesn't really go to the doctor that much, right? Maybe every now and then, but empowered patient doesn't really go to a doctor. An empowered patient is their own doctor. And if they do go to a doctor, they go to a naturopathic doctor who works with them, right? Who understands all the stuff that we talk about on our crazy show here. And so that is all designed to empower you to not feel, if you ever leave a doctor's office, whether naturopathic, chiropractic, cleansing detox specialist, whatever, health coach, if you ever leave a place like that feeling less empowered than you did going in, then that's time to fire your doctor. Okay. So that's just first and foremost. We have to just forget going to a doctor if they're going to make us feel dependent and reliant on them. Right. So, Jeanette says, yes, we'll follow you on Instagram. Yeah, we do a lot of fun stuff on Instagram. We have a lot of fun stuff with the Instagram stories too. It's really fun. We like doing that. And also we let you guys know too, usually on Instagram stories when we're going to go live. So that way you get a notification there as well. Rob says, even radon gas is early spoken of. We tested my parents' house and it was a 9.8 level from a safe 4.0. We got the mitigation installed and the level dropped to 1.8. Wow. Radon gas. How long were your parents living in that house? Unbelievable. Whew. So it was at a 9.8. They say that safe is 4.0 and you got it down to 1.8. Rebecca says, come join me in the academy, guys. Can go more in depth there. Lots of cool people sharing thoughts and advice. Best thing I have done for myself in a long time. Justin, Kate, and Dr. Bergman and Mike are great. Thanks, Rebecca. It's such an awesome, it's such a pleasure having you in there as well. What she's referring to is the Extreme Health Academy, and there's a link to it down below. If you guys want to get a free 14-day trial, there's the code EHR14, and you can check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff. We just released, Becca, I'm curious what you think about the health database too. The health database is every week in the academy, we answer health questions. We haven't done it last few weeks because we were in Texas with our biological dentist, and then there was Christmas. And so we're going to get back on to doing weekly live calls, and we categorize, alphabetize, and itemize everything that we've ever done in there, and we put it into what we call the health database. And so you can search all these different tabs by subject matter, and then you can go by alphabetize. You can alphabetize all of that and then find what you're looking for and all the different people talking about it. So it's a really great resource we're adding to on a daily basis, or on a weekly basis, I should probably say. So Rebecca, how's the weather in Ohio? Are you, is it getting, well, it probably won't be getting any warmer yet. It's only January, right? But hope everything's going great with you. Brendan says, do you know if 5G is going into Oregon? Brendan, I think you mentioned you're in Oregon, right? I believe it is. I know it's in Austin, Texas. It's being rolled out. Did you see the story recently that AT&T is now building? Now get this. This is the mindset of the medical model, guys. AT&T, how they're able to do this, because they're a technology company, right? But somehow AT&T is building a 5G hospital. This is the level of intelligence of the people that work within this industry that we call the medical industry. And it is an industry, right? They're designed to make money. They want to make money off of you. That's how they stay in business, right? The geniuses that are involved in this medical industry have now put together and worked with Verizon to create a 5G hospital. Now, you tell me who you think is going to, people that go there are actually going to heal. I mean, it's absolutely, I think what happened is these people's pineal glands probably got decalcified from fluoride, and there's too much EMF in their brain, and too much MSG floating around in their synapses because they're somehow not able to think. A 5G hospital is going to do nothing but cause people to get sicker and to die quicker. Mark my words on that. So good luck if you go to a 5G hospital. Because that's not the place none of us want to end up, that's for sure. And it's a great financial profit boom for AT&T, right? Get a hospital to create a 5G hospital, right? Crazy. Like, what are they thinking? What are people thinking about when they're making this? Did they not look at the studies? Oh my goodness. Nikki says, to noise, silence means party time. Yes, it gets broken. What is the code for the 14-day trial to the Academy, Pamela? Yeah, it's EHR14. So you're assuming you're watching on YouTube. So in the description down below, there's an Extreme Health Academy link. It's .com. And then if you type in the code EHR, it's all one word, uppercase, EHR14. That gives you a free 2-week trial, so you can check it out. And Pamela, if you sign up, tag me in the forums, and I'd love to connect with you later today and help you in any way I possibly can. Janet says, yes, they are. I haven't, but listen to Dr. B often, and I really should. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying in relationship or response to. Yeah, I was just reading something, Brendan. Are you in Oregon? I think you are, right? It's in 2 cities in North Carolina, 5G. This 5G thing, guys, is going to go everywhere. And so we cannot continue to run away from this stuff. We have to. This is the problem with 5G, is that you can't feel it. Most people can't feel it. And there's been a lot of studies showing now that 5G is now jumping onto the dirty electricity in your walls. And so we recently had Brian Hoyer out a couple months ago testing our house. And he's a building biologist. And he does a lot of work with Dr. Jack Cruz, with EMF. And he was testing the dirty electricity in our walls. And dude, you get close to the wall with that meter and it just spikes. I would say, for example, I think he's got like $40,000 worth of EMF equipment, and he gets close to it. And I say, hey, what should the meter level be? And let's say, just say, for example, he said, yeah, it should be about a 5 to be safe, 5 or under. And ours would be like 150. And so that was what the levels were in our house. And so now with this 5G tower jumping onto the dirty electricity in the house, then we have to start thinking about moving or something that we can do, right? So this is happening to all of us, guys, and we really have to, in my opinion, moving into 2019 and beyond, if they're going to be forcing this 5G on us, I think that the biggest thing we can do is change our environment. Like, you know, if a fish is sick, you don't look at what it's eating, you look at what kind of water it's swimming in, right? Same goes with us. Our bodies are intelligently designed, responding accurately and properly to a sick environment. So we need to fix our environment that we live in, and that's the first order of business. So that means your house. That means mitigating your house as much as you possibly can. But then I also want to stress, too, that while we're doing this, and we understand that the environment is getting more and more toxic, and this is having an effect on our cells, right? While we're doing this, we need to make sure that we're having a good time, right? Bring some fun back into your life, please. You know, with me, and lately it's been really serious with learning all this stuff, right? And having twins, 6-month-old twins, there's a lot of stress, and running 2 different businesses, right? The radio show and the Extreme Health Academy, and trying to make sure everyone's happy and all this stuff. There's a lot of stress in our lives, and you guys are the same way. You have jobs, you have careers, you have relationships, you have children and family and friends and all this stuff that are weighing on us. But I think one of the things that we need to do is bring more fun and more laughter back into our life. So maybe work on that in 2019, doing some of that, but then also making sure you're not putting your head in the sand. You're not burying your head in the sand. You're still learning about all this stuff, and you're still working on fixing your home environment, right? But you're bringing more fun into your life. You know, at least for me, that's where I'm going to be focusing. More music, more entertainment, more fun, and just enjoying life more. I think that is huge. It's huge. And, you know, for the longest time, when I first learned about all this alternative health stuff, and I learned how the medical model is basically killing people. Hundreds of thousands of people die every year for taking, it's over 120,000 people a year die by taking properly prescribed medication in the proper way and the proper amount by their doctor, right? You learn about this stuff, you learn about chemotherapy and radiation killing people and making people sicker and the environment getting worse. And it just all got so heavy on me that I started to realize, like, if I'm going to prevent myself from getting depression and being upset and angry about all this stuff, I better start working on my personal development and spiritual side so that I have something to anchor myself when I start learning all this stuff. So now I've taken the approach that I'm not for or against anything. I do my best to be like that. So 5G, of course, it's coming and it's damaging, right? But this is what they're doing, and this is just sort of, it's like an animal, like a dog. Like you just see what's happening, and there's no emotion or energy to it, right? So developing your spiritual side so that this stuff doesn't affect you that much, right? On your nervous system and your psyche and your dopamine levels. You don't get down and depressed about all the stuff that's happening. So you mitigate that, and then you start bringing in some more fun in your life, and then you can start working on all that stuff on your health, and you can do it in a fun way, right? You can do it in a way that's creative, that's playful, that's fun. You don't have to be angry and upset about all the stuff that they're doing to us. You don't have to give your power away and be depressed about it all. You can detach from that, right? And so this is where the personal development, spiritual growth comes into all this stuff too, because the natural human reaction to learning all this stuff that we're learning is like complete depression, right? And just being angry and upset, and that does nothing for your healing, to be angry and upset all the time. So it's really important to, maybe in 2019, you guys and me too, bring more music, more entertainment, more fun, more laughter back into your life. And if you're working on a spiritual level too, you can do all that while learning more and more and more about what's actually happening to us. So it's really really a holistic approach to our health. Angie says to Brendan, Brendan, I'm in Southern Oregon. I wonder if my town uses fluoride. I bet it can be looked up. I filter anyway, so just never thought to look. Angie, interesting you say that, because if you go into the Environmental Working Group, I think it's ewg.org, and you can look up water quality in your area. And I did that recently, and there was like chromium, there was all these antimony, and there's all these toxins that were cancer-causing toxins in the water, and you can look up by your zip code. It's ewg.org, and it's pretty frightening. So like I said, you got to filter your water. We get a lot of questions about what water filtration system we use. Just to be real quick on that, we've gotten a lot of questions on Instagram about that. We have a whole house filter from Patrick Durkin. I think it's Natural Action. That comes in point of entry. And then we have a Omica 12-stage reverse osmosis system underneath our sink. And then we take that water that comes out of the faucet of the sink that's been through the RO system of Omica, the 12-stage RO system they have, and then I put that water into our Berkey. And so RO and the Berkey claim to get rid of all fluorides. So then I take that water, and then there's more stuff that you can do with it that I won't bore you with, but you can, energetically imprint it. You can vortex it. You can add minerals to it. You can distill it. There's all kinds of things that you can do to enhance your water even more. So Teresa says, or Brendan says, yes, I believe all of Oregon is fluoride free, but not 100%. Okay. Wow, Brendan, your dad just turned 76. My dad just turned 78 the other day. 76, 78. It's totally plugged in. That's awesome. Teresa says, are you thinking about a log cabin without wiring in the walls? That would be ideal. There's all kinds of things that you can get. Like you can get something called Magnacrete, which is a wall basically that mitigates EMF radiation, but also doesn't mold. So all sheetrock and dry wall molds, all of it. Microscopic mold particles coming off of that. That's why you got to get a air filtration system in your house, right? So Teresa, it's like the more you look into all this stuff, the more you realize if we're going to live a conventional life and just rent an apartment or rent a house or buy a house, we just have to like get an air filter, a water filter. Got to, swap out the lights in your home. The default way of living is killing all of us. And 76, 78, we should be living to 100, 150 minimum, in my opinion. So, if you believe in the Bible, it's interesting in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, in chapter 6 or 7, or I think it was like 3 maybe even, where the curse of mankind after Adam and Eve sinned was that woman would have pain in childbirth, which I think is really interesting on a lot of different levels, right? But the other curse apparently that God gave to mankind was that our lives would be diminished down to 120 years. Now, how crazy is that, right? You see a 115-year-old person, you're celebrating the length of their life, right? But we're meant to live a lot longer. Whether or not the Bible's true, whatever your thoughts are on that, it's my contention that even if that's true or not, we're meant to live to at least 150. And I think it's possible if we're smart about it, if we're connected to our mission, if we have a deep spiritual connection to our family and love each other. I think all of this plays a role. So anyway, that was a long post show. I apologize for that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys are awesome. About the angle of water, Brendan Sage says, yes, I have. You mean the 520, what is it? The electrons that are on the water molecules, the electrons that are on the water molecules kind of look like they attach to the molecule, and they look like kind of like a Mickey Mouse head, and the angle that those electrons attach to the water molecule it apparently makes a big difference. And who's done a lot of work on this? He's been on our show. Leonard Horowitz has done a lot of work on the angle of water. So yeah, I have heard about that. I don't know too much about it, but he's been on our show. But he didn't talk about the angle of water on our show. I think he talked about like AIDS or something like that. Nikki says it's a challenge rather than a threat to mitigate the shadows. Extreme Health Fellowship is leading by way of example. The contribution is awesome. Well, thanks, Nikki. I appreciate that. I love your words of wisdom in here too. I love reading like your powerful words, and it's really cool. I like the way you word stuff in here. Kent Kahoo is here. Awesome. Well, I'm just super excited that you guys are here. It's so much fun. We're going to have another show on Wednesday with Allison Huish, and we talked with her a while back, but the connection wasn't great, so we rescheduled. And we're going to talk with her about how she healed her. I shouldn't even say her. Okay, so this is how we got to reframe our language, guys. This is so hard to do. I shouldn't even say it's hard to do. It's not hard to do. It's challenging to do, right? You get into these weird language loops that are given to us by other people. Language is used against us all the time. So Allison Huish's body had some extra cells in her brain. How about that? So she was able to allow those cells to exit her body using the energetic frequency of frankincense oil. So you can probably know what I'm saying by that. I don't like to say curing or the C word. I don't like to mention those words. I do my best to avoid using those words. So that'll be on Wednesday. Kent Kahoo says, do you have any show on honoring our parents via the stuff we inherit in our nervous system? I do. If you go to extremehealthradio.com, let me put a little thing here because I think you guys might like this. This is the crux of my focus in my work. Extreme Health Radio, and you go tag recall healing. So that should, let me pop that in the chat room for you guys really quick. And the guy that I would recommend listening to mostly about that is Dr. Richard Massey. And we're friends with him and been over to his house and spent some time with him. And like I said, he's got a lot of stuff inside the Extreme Health Academy as well. But if you go to Recall Healing, I put that show there, and that's for you. We've done a lot of shows on that kind of stuff. Janet says, should join the Extreme Health Academy. Sorry about that. No worries, Janet. It'll always be there for you. So whenever you do, I'm not sure about the coupon code. I'm assuming that will always be there. That's up to Dr. Bergman and Mike as well as myself and Kate. So, but the Academy, as far as I know, will always be there. So if you do join, tag me in the forums, and I'd love to connect with you and tell me that you listened here on the in the chat room on the live show. All right, guys. Angie says, Nikki, a challenge rather than a threat. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. If you want something to study and look into how language is used against us. You can do some YouTubes on that and find out how the words that we use are designed to break us down, and that our bodies actually respond to the words that we use, which is really interesting, right? It's kind of like taking the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto and water and applying it to our bodies, because we are 70 to 90% water, right? So we're carrying the homeopathic imprints of the water that we drink and of the thoughts that we think and the language we use, right? So something to think about on a deeper level, right? So lots of ways to heal the body, guys. All right, love you very much. Man, we've gone a long time. I told Kate I was going to start doing shorter shows. So, but I just have so much fun talking with you guys, and it's so much fun. All right, guys, if you haven't joined the Academy, go to extremehealthacademy.com, enter the code EHR14, start your free 14-day trial. If you guys are interested in the show notes for today's show, everything will be available at extremehealthradio.com/649. And if you want to get the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, the Bellicon Rebounder, the Stockton Aloe 1, or the Magnetico Mattress Pad, those will be at extremehealthradio.com/649. Or they will be, if you guys are listening live on YouTube, which you guys are, in the show notes below. So, all right, guys, I love you so much. So much fun being back. I'm super excited about being back and connecting with you guys all. It's so much fun. All right, I'm going to go and go hang out. If you guys want to follow us on Instagram, you can see what we do most of the day with our little twins and dogs and the adventures we have. So love you very much. You guys are amazing. I'll join you live again on Wednesday, 10:45 a.m. Pacific. And until then, we love you. Have some more fun in your life. Enjoy your life and laugh more. Listen to more music and enjoy yourselves. All right, guys. Love you very much and talk to you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse